Hi everyone, this is Ron with Neowin, and today we are unboxing the Samsung Galaxy A51. So this is a mid-range smartphone. Samsung announced it back in December, and I believe at CES this year they announced the international availability of it. And of course, like I said, it's a mid-range phone. So this is powered by a Exynos 9611 chipset, and that's the only chipset I believe that is available for this, because the phone is actually not available in the United States yet, as far as I can tell. So it's only an Exynos chipset, and I went looking around. So the Exynos 9611 has 4 Cortex A73 performance cores and 4 Cortex A53 power efficient cores, and that feels the chipset itself is new, but the cores feel outdated at this point, because you look at phones like the TCI Plex that I reviewed in December, and that has the Snapdragon 675, and the cores on that are based on the Cortex A76 and A55. So this feels a little outdated. It's more comparable to something like the Snapdragon 665 or the 636, which use the same kind of Cortex cores. But well, that's just on paper. Doesn't always mean everything, so you'll have to see how it actually performs while using it. Aside from that, the specs for this specific edition are 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage. I believe it is expandable with micro SD card, and I think there's also a variant with 6 gigabytes of RAM, but not in Europe. I looked in a few countries, and they only sell the 4 gigabyte version. So this starts, depending on where you live, at $369, $379. In Portugal specifically, it's actually $399, so that's a very big difference that I don't know how we can explain. But yeah, so it's a mid-range phone, clearly. And we're just gonna go ahead and take a look at what's inside the box. So here the manuals are just there, and so is the SIM ejection tool here. So you take this out. Under the phone, there's of course the power adapter, 15-watt charger, so fast-ish charging, 3.5mm headphones, charging cable, USB Type-C, as you'd expect at this point in time. And you just take out the phone from this plastic. You see the display right away, which is beautiful, but I'll mention that in a little bit in a second. So I want to start by talking about just the external design, because this phone is gorgeous. Like I think it's beautiful, and I understand at this point, I've said that many times. I've always praised the design of phones that I review, but in this specific case, I just love the color. Like Samsung also sent me a black one here, so they're both what Samsung calls Prism Crush. And that's because there's a little pattern on the back. If you can shine the light on it at the right angle, you see that that pattern there. That looks like a prism, I guess. And it's nice, but the color itself on this blue one, that's what really makes it stand out. I used to like black phones. They're classy and subdued, I guess, but I really like the way this one stands out with this color. I think it looks really good. And the rim itself is also colored here, so you see it's also blue. It's a different shade of blue, but I guess that's natural, being that this is glass and this is metal. But it still looks really nice. It's a sort of greenish blue. I don't know if you can tell that it's greenish. In real life, it looks a little greenish. On video, I don't think it captures as well. And so let's take a look at the back here. There's 4 cameras. There's this camera module that's kind of like what we have on the Galaxy S20 family now. So 4 cameras. Main sensor is 48 megapixels with quad pixel technology, so it combines 4 pixels into one to get better lighting. Then there's a 12 megapixel ultra wide lens, a 5 megapixel macro lens, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So for portraits, it should be a little more accurate. And then of course you have the flash there. And then over on the front you have a single 36 megapixel camera, 32. I actually forget the actual value, but it's something along those lines. And going around the phone real quick, there's the volume rocker, power button, which also serves as the Bixby button if you're into hitting yourself. And then on the bottom firing speaker, microphone, USB Type-C, a headphone jack. Here's just a SIM card slot, and up top another microphone. So it's pretty simple. You can tell already that there's a fingerprint sensor underneath the display. It works fairly well. It's optical, not ultrasonic, so that's reserved for the higher end Samsung smartphones. But it still works fairly well, I would say. I think it's a little faster than, a little more accurate than what I have on my Oppo, but I could be wrong about that. So let's talk about the software for a little bit, because it's a lot. I've always felt like Samsung's skin is a little too much. I've always preferred a more stock approach to Android, and so I was very skeptical. I am a little skeptical of Samsung's implementation, but there are a few things I like about it already that actually surprised me in a good way. So when I first set up the phone, I reset it, and I did the first time setup. So the Google apps are installed by default. That's just a rule of Android. And my problem with custom skins like this is that many times then OEMs preload a lot of apps that do the same things as those Google apps and don't really add any more value. They're just duplications of services. So I was really surprised though, because Samsung asks you during the first time setup which apps you want to install. There's a whole list of Samsung apps. I believe even the calculator. I can't even see a calculator. Is there a calculator on this? I think I might have disabled the Samsung calculator because I can't find it. So a lot of Samsung apps, they just ask you if you want them, and by default they are selected. So to be clear, it's not like an absent-minded customer just clicking through it won't install them anyways. But you get the option right off the bat to not install them, and I really appreciate it. I just didn't install anything Samsung that wasn't mandatory, and the only ones that are mandatory are these three. They're, I would say, pretty basic features. So files, radio, and, well, aside from Bixby, of course, pretty basic features. And then everything's just, phone contacts. This all built-in functionality that you need to have on a phone. So I really like that a lot of those things were removed. Even Samsung Pass and Secure folder here, I set those up after the fact. They were not there when I first set up the phone. And so it's actually a lot cleaner than I thought. Even aside from Samsung apps, there are a few preloaded apps, mostly Microsoft, because Microsoft and Samsung are very friendly lately. So we get a bunch of these suggestions. I think some of them are still optional, but the thing is I actually did install most of these, so I actually use these, so it's fine for me. And then there's Netflix and Facebook, which are also preloaded on a lot of phones. And so it's really a better experience than I thought it would be. I thought I'd be forced to install a lot of things that I don't want, and I wasn't. So that was nice. And then the Samsung skin itself, One UI, aside from this stupid Bixby page here that is the most useless thing I've ever seen. And I think it's annoying how it thinks it's useful, because there's so many things here, and I don't care about a single one. So it's kind of annoying, but you can just not go there, or if you install a different launcher, you'll never even see it. And that's not a huge deal. And even the side keys, it can be used to trigger Bixby, but you can disable that as well. They now give you the option to just use it as a power button. And again, it's just a lot of things that Samsung seems to have learned over the years, and they give you all this lot of options now, and you're not forced to deal with the stuff that you don't like. And that's good. I think that's really good. And that kind of extends to a lot of what Samsung is doing here. For example, this gesture here to bring down the notifications is not natively what you can do when you swipe down on the screen. Usually it'll just open the app drawer, just like swiping up. But you can change that and bring down the notifications, which I think is a lot more useful, since why would you want to swipe both ways for the same thing? And so Samsung lets you change a lot of things that I think are good. Dark mode is of course now part of Android 10, so it's not as interesting anymore, but I still like having it. And of course you have themes for the launcher. And I also think that's interesting in the sense I don't actually like the themes. Let me just say that right off the bat. All of the ones I see look ugly. But what I think is interesting about them is that they don't just change the icons and the wallpaper on your phone. They can include the always on display design, and they actually affect the apps, the Samsung apps that come pre-built, also change to match the theme that you select. So when this is done, hopefully soon, you'll see that the icons on my home screen changed, and so did the folders and everything. But even the phone app, the phone app now looks a little different. So the colors are different. It's not green, which I think is the color Samsung uses by default here for the highlights. So it's blue instead. You can have gradients and everything. This is a simple theme. It's the only one I can tolerate. But it kind of changes all the Samsung app. I don't think it changes the camera app. I hope not. Okay. So it changes a lot of the things about the operating system. And I think that's kind of cool. You get this deeper degree of customizability right off the bat without any custom launchers or anything. And I think that as much as I don't care personally, I think it's hard not to appreciate the fact that they give you these options right off the bat. And it's not just themes like this. You can change the font, which I think, as far as I know, it's the only Android skin that does that. And it's just the kind of thing that you think it's not really necessary, but what's the harm in having it, right? So it's cool that they give you all these options. Right off the bat, you don't have to root your phone or do anything complex like that. You just get what you want, you apply it, and you can even change the always on display, as I was trying to get to. It's really cool. You can just apply all of that and you do it, and it's safe because you don't have to go into the Play Store looking for shady apps that change these things. You don't have to root your phone. It's just all there by default. And I think there's value in that. There's just an interesting value proposition to having those capabilities right off the bat. And then Samsung just offers so many things on top of Android. There's a lot of stuff here that is natural for Android and it's just built in, but then there's some things that are very unique. So the themes, of course. If you go into the display settings, dark mode, there's of course that the font that I was mentioning earlier, and then there's the edge screen. Of course, is a feature of Android phones of Samsung phones that we've had for a while. So you have these edge screens that have a variety of tools, and you can customize that as much as you want. You can even download more panels if you don't like just the built-in ones. And there's just so many customization options in the Samsung software that I really can kind of appreciate the way that they let you do so many things with the phone. And right now, at least, of course, it's coming off of a fresh reset, but it doesn't seem to be slowing down the phone that much. So it gives you a lot of stuff without huge impact on performance, as far as I can tell. And it's just cool. So you can customize this edge lighting thing. I believe this was originally meant for like those phones with the curved edges, which you don't get anymore, or especially not in this one. But you can still get those lighting effects, and it's interesting how you can customize that as well. You got a bunch of effects available, colors, all of that. And it's interesting. It's a lot of stuff that Samsung lets you do that are not built into Android, and it just gives you this way bigger degree of customizability. And yeah, it's just cool. I think it's just cool how many things you can do with a Samsung phone, or change on a Samsung phone without having to get any extra apps. Even if personally I wouldn't change any of those things, I think there's definitely a value proposition in being able to do it. And so in terms of software, that's really all I can say. There's just so much stuff here to try out that I couldn't cover all of it. Of course, there's the link to Windows feature. I probably shouldn't forget that. It seems pretty useful because the Your Phone app on Windows is useful by itself, but the integration with Samsung smartphones is a lot better because it doesn't rely on Bluetooth as much. It's a lot faster, and it allows for screen sharing, which you can't do with any other Android phones either. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really excited to see how well it works with my computer. And then there's just a ton of things that I'm gonna have to take a look over time. But on a final note, let me just say that the display on this is really good. It's a Super AMOLED display, and I gotta give Samsung credit because I've reviewed a few phones with AMOLED displays, and if you've seen my reviews for them, every time I review an AMOLED phone, there's an issue that I mentioned with the colors of the display towards the edges, some discoloration that can happen sometimes. It's very subtle, but I feel it. And on this phone, I mean, I've only had it for a few minutes, but I can't see anything that I can point out that's not perfect. It just looks really good. And the colors look a little washed out on the video because my camera sucks. But aside from that, the screen is just absolutely fantastic. Bezels are minimal. The front-facing camera doesn't protrude. It's just flush. It feels really nice, and it just feels like a massive screen. This is a 2400 by 1080 display, so this is a 20:9 aspect ratio, and it feels massive, but it's very manageable because of that tall aspect ratio, right? So it's, I don't know, I just like looking at it. It's a good display, and that's really all I can say about it. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to review this. It's my first Samsung phone. It looks pretty good, and we'll have to see how well it does over time. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. I'll see you guys next time.